And we should be good to go.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. By the way, have you guys heard about this IATSE situation?
IATSE, yeah.
IATSE?
No.
I'm a member of the IATSE union.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on this thing? I would like to say just a couple words of support at the beginning. Is that cool?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I support it. It's absurd that.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Going to start the recording in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Filmcast, a podcast about movies. My name is David Chen, and I plan to be the first one of the NPCs on this podcast to become self-aware.
Very good.
Joining me today is Devindra Hardawar.
I think I know what Candyman is missing. Some sweet, sweet Channing Tatum action.
Jeffrey Kanata.
I'm excited to talk about this week's movie, Free Candy Guy Man.
And Danish Syed.
If you say sloppy mess with good ideas 5 times in the mirror, you'll get one of the movies we'll be reviewing tonight.
Wow.
Very good.
Well, those are, of course, in reference to the fact that we'll be reviewing 2 movies on tonight's episode of The Filmcast. We got a review of Candyman for you. We got a review of Free Guy for you. And then we got some film news we're going to do before that. So that's what's in store for us tonight on The Filmcast. Find more episodes of this show at thefilmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. You can also recommend something for us to watch at #/tag on Twitter. And also, if you want to support this show, patreon.com/filmpodcast. This week on The After Dark, which is available exclusively to folks at patreon.com/filmpodcast, we got a conversation about Star Wars Visions, which Devindra and Jeff have seen, and I have not. And we are also going to provide part 2 of the Mystery of the Preacher Bot that was discussed last week in the After Dark and that was published on the main feed. The part 2 will be exclusive to patrons over at patreon.com/filmpodcast. So
We're going to try to entice you to watch Visions. Isn't that what we decided?
yes, Chenticing Chen is what that's.
That makes me feel uncomfortable saying
Yes.
it out loud.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was better via text.
But Danish, welcome back to the Filmcast. Did you guys know that Danish is not only making art in a rapidly gentrifying Chicago, he's also into video games? I just wanted to. You are an expert in 2 ways.
I see. Yeah, you got both movies in there.
You got both movies. Yeah, exactly.
The perfect guest.
Exactly.
Yeah, we planned this whole thing.
Yeah.
You've also been
Precisely.
haunted by ghosts of the past, right?
Yeah.
So it all
Also,
kind of works.
every
he's
damn day.
murdered
Yeah.
so many people.
Indeed. All right.
Spoilers, Jeff.
let's not
Spoilers.
talk about that.
So a couple of quick film news items I wanted to mention this week before we get to our reviews. And we will be reviewing 2 movies. We'll try to put the timestamps for the reviews with spoilers in the show notes if you want to skip to one movie or the other. But one of the things that's going on right now is this negotiation, right, that IATSE is conducting right now, which is the union that basically is behind a lot of the entertainment that we watch and take for granted. Jeff, I believe you're like a part of this union, right?
I am a member of IATSE, yes. Local 76, I believe. I should know that off the top of my head. It's the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, which is a very broad, wide-ranging union. I became a member because I worked in the box office as a ticket sales employee for the large venues of Los Angeles, the Geffen Playhouse, the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, the Hollywood Bowl. All of those box offices were IATSE box offices. So I became an employee, a member of the union that way. But it also encompasses a lot of below the line filmmaking people, folks that work long hours for very little pay. It's a labor union, and they're finally saying, hey, we should probably make a little bit more money, and we should probably be paid a little bit more fairly than we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I say kudos.
You can learn more about this at iatse.net. There is a form letter that you can sign up for, in which the IATSE union is demanding, quote, they're demanding that the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers make a fair deal with IATSE and address the following problems. 1, excessively unsafe and harmful working hours. 2, unlivable wages for the lowest paid crafts. 3, consistent failure to provide reasonable rest during meal breaks between workdays and on weekends. And 4, workers on certain new media streaming projects getting paid less even on productions with budget that rival or exceed those of traditionally released blockbusters. As people who are adjacent to the film industry, I'm sure we all know and have heard stories of people who work extremely long hours and aren't necessarily paid as well as they should be. And so this feels to me like something that a lot of people in our audience may want to support. And if you want to, you should go to iotc.net and read and learn more about this topic. But we got a few emails about this topic over the course of last week, and so I just wanted to mention it because there's a lot of work that goes into making the entertainment that we watch each week. And I think the people who help to make it should be compensated fairly. So
this is a lot of the grunt work. This is a lot of the people who are the first to arrive and the last to leave that work, 20-hour days, a lot of days in a row. It's crazy. And that last bit about new media, that's a big problem that a lot of the unions are having to deal with, because what is considered new media often. We just watched the Emmys, or Dave watched the Emmys recently, and
yep.
and
one of us watched the Emmys. Yep.
Yeah, there was pretty much a clean sweep for what some still consider new media. These companies,
this newfangled media called the streamings, I think, is
internet distributed stuff, which doesn't fall under the purview of negotiated contracts in a lot of cases, and so all of the rules that workers have fought for decades all of a sudden don't apply, because it's this new form of media, which is not really true. It's a stupid loophole that has caused a lot of problems. And to be fair, many of those problems are caused by very dumb, slow-moving unions that were way too slow to understand what was happening and how they needed to address it. So the fault doesn't just rely on the producers, but it is something that needs to change. So I'm certainly in support of IATSE as a member of that union.
Let's move on. Another piece of big film news that dropped this week, rather by surprise, was the casting of a new Mario film was announced.
From Shigeru Miyamoto himself. Nobody expected this.
So they're making a new Mario animated film. That's a big piece of news. That's the movie's apparently going to be released in holiday of 2022, I believe, right? And they announced the cast list of this movie. And I'm just going to read off some of the people that are in the cast. You got Sebastian Maniscalco, very funny comedian. He's going to be Spike. Fred Armisen, Cranky Kong. Seth Rogen, Donkey Kong. Love that guy. Keegan-Michael Key is Toad. Jack Black is Bowser. What a hilarious dude.
So good.
Anya Taylor-Joy, super talented actor. She's going to play Peach. Then you have the two main characters. Charlie Day is playing Luigi, and Chris Pratt is Mario. Now, the internet promptly lost its collective mind when this happened, and it was kind of amazing to see. For a few reasons, I think. I mean, I don't know if you guys experienced the internet's collective sigh of disbelief when this occurred.
It's usually just Twitter, though, not like the entire net. But
sure.
Twitter corner.
I mean, Twitter and Tumblr, and to a large degree TikTok as well. But I think that this is a confluence of a few things. First of all, Chris Pratt is generally regarded as the lesser of the Chris's, is my sense, right?
It is his Chris ranking just plummeted over the last few years. Poor guy.
Yeah, I mean, can I ask you?
I think he's a top tier Chris. I gotta be. I mean,
well, among the MCU Chris's,
there was a famous post right on Twitter that was like, one of these Chris's has to go, right? And it was Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pine, and Chris Pratt.
And nobody told Chris Pratt that wasn't like law. Nobody told him that he didn't actually have to walk off into the distance, so he got very sad about it.
Well, I think a lot of people felt like Chris Pratt was the one that could go, and
I don't understand why one of the Chris's has to go in the first place.
Well, Jeff, it's a mental exercise. You see, it's we're playing a game. We're playing a thought exercise of which Chris do we value least?
Yes.
Let me ask you this question: of those four Chris's, is there a Chris that you value most? Let's Let's do that exercise on the
Whoa.
podcast. Oh.
Wait, Hemsworth, Pine, Pratt. What's the last
And
one?
Evans. Captain America.
Oof, rough.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say for a long time for me, it was Chris Pine was my favorite. Chris.
I was about to say Pine. It might be Pine. I like a Pine, but ooh, dude. All of those are good Chris's. I mean, as far as Chris's go,
all of them.
they're pretty good Chris's.
Three out of the four of them, maybe. Anyway, go ahead.
You don't like Chris Pratt at all. I think he generally
it's
makes
more
what
about
he's in better.
It's about what happened, I think, over time. Like people were like Parks and Rec. Oh, this chubby guy, he's funny, he's hilarious, he's kind of a doofus. He really transformed himself for Guardians of the Galaxy. Wow, I love him. And then I think Jurassic World happened, and a lot of other things happened, and then like news about him just being like, I think he is like one of the few conservative folks in Hollywood, basically.
Right.
So it's a bunch of stuff all piling onto him.
I mean,
but mainly for me, it's Jurassic World, where I'm like, oh no, please don't make him the next Harrison Ford, because this is not working.
Yeah, I mean, there's several reasons to not like Chris Pratt. Go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about two separate things. If you're talking about his personal viewpoints in life,
It's all part of it, of like the internet's judgment.
It's all Pratt of it.
I would say both the fact that he is in Jurassic World, which and the Jurassic World franchise, which I'm not a huge fan of, but also quoting from a Daily Beast article, like he follows several prominent Republicans on Instagram, including Ben Shapiro, Dan Crenshaw, and Madison Cawthorn. And he was recently dogged for an insensitive voting joke where he went on a spiel about how important it was to vote and let your voice be heard, not in the 2020 presidential election, but for his animated movie Onward in the 2020 People's Choice Awards. So it's the whole combo, the whole package, Jeff.
And then like it will never not be funny to me that the entire MCU people were like, no, we cannot let the internet make fun of Chris Pratt. We will step up and defend our Chris.
They got to step up and defend Chris.
Hilarious.
Not when Black Widow is trying to get the money that she's owed, though. Just if the internet hurts Chris Pratt's feelings, that's when you got to step up, right? That's when you need to use the collective might of your celebrity. So
I understand that we are far beyond the place of separating art from artist in this world ever again, but I will say that I think not a fan of the Jurassic World movies, but what's the dude supposed to do? Say no to being in Jurassic World?
Could be better in them. I mean,
well,
that
was
would help.
He was not the problem.
Exactly.
I got to agree with Jeff that he was not the problem in those movies.
He wasn't the problem, but he did not like. It takes a certain type of actor like really elevate crap, and that movie was badly written, badly directed. The first one, I think the second one, we talked about this in our review. The second one has a lot more going for it because they didn't lean on him being the ultimate macho Indiana Jones guy. You know, it was that character, whoever and he basically embraced it. But yeah.
But Jeff, go ahead.
My kids have gotten very much into the Lego movie, so I've watched it numerous times now, and he's great in it. He's great. And specifically, this is about voiceover acting, and I think there are a lot of A-list screen celebrities that don't make great A-list voiceover artists.
Look no further than What If.
Exactly. Well said. But I think he is fantastic in the Lego movies as a voiceover artist.
It's true. It's true. He is good in those movies.
And I think, generally speaking, he makes the stuff that he's in better. Even the bad stuff that that is bad. I think he's usually makes it a little bit better. I think he's very charming, very charismatic, and can do comedy and action at the same time. There are a few of those people out there that do it as well. So yes, he's problematic off the screen, but I think on the screen, I
don't know. Like, beside, like, here's the other thing. Like, you're saying he makes everything better. I think Guardians, like, Peter Quill's a perfect character for him, like for that actor. But I'm looking at everything else, guys, and it's like Passengers.
I didn't see that.
I mean,
oh man,
he was good.
I mean, the Tomorrow War, which we talked about. I
think there's just, Jeff, I think there's just a lot of people who find him like metaphorically punchable. You know what I mean?
That's true. And I think, but I push back against that. It seems weird. You know what it is? He is a victim. Victim is the wrong word. He is
he's
an
just
example.
a straight white man trying to exist on the internet.
Stop. He's an example of this love of building something up and then tearing it down.
Yes.
Absolutely.
He is absolutely like overexposed, and,
Yes,
there was this tipping point where everyone's just went too much Pratt.
Too much.
And that's not his fault, because you're that dude, and somebody offers you those movies, you say fucking yes. But he just was too much of him too fast, and then people were just like, oh, I'm sick of this guy, and that's not his fault. I don't think that's his fault.
All right.
I agree completely with that. Yeah, I think he's not a bad Chris. I might put him last, but that doesn't mean that
nobody's saying he's a bad Chris. I think he's among that quadrant of like great Chris's. You know, does he one of these is not
he
like
could be
the
a
other,
mediocre Chris,
okay?
but the other
Sure.
Chris's are so good, basically.
Yes.
That
That's all it is. No one's saying go away.
I
We're
feel
just
like
saying,
somebody
get off this list of good Chris's.
I think somebody has to defend Pine a little bit.
No,
I don't
he's
think he
good.
needs any defense.
He
He's
doesn't.
awesome.
He's
great.
awesome.
Talk about a
he's
guy
great
who
in
makes
everything.
everything better. Like really,
I
like he
guess.
shows up for 4 minutes in Into the Spider-Verse as a voice, and you're like, oh yeah, that's actually an iconic Spider-Man now in my.
I mean, have you seen Unstoppable? Come on.
Yeah, come on.
Amazing.
I thought he
The
was.
train won't stop.
I mean, until Chris Pine, unless Chris Pine has something to say about it, it won't.
And
Yeah.
Denzel.
But
Yes.
I just thought he was electrifying in Star Trek. You know, as the new Captain
Yeah.
Kirk.
Sure,
It's
sure.
just like
Yeah.
I was so amped about that new cast after seeing that film. And he was such an amazing part of that movie.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
did such honor to
you're
the
right.
character of Captain Kirk.
Hell or High
Wonder
Water.
Woman.
Hell or
Yeah,
High
Hell or
Water
High
is the
Water.
trump
Yes.
card. Yeah, Hell or
Yes.
High Water is. I'm just looking at his IMDb. I forgot about Hell and High Water.
Yeah.
Damn it. He's good. He's great. They're all good Chris's.
They're all good. Well, also, I don't know. Let's
let's-
stop beating down on Pratt. How about Pratt as Mario? Which I think is the nobody told Shigeru Miyamoto what was happening on Twitter, and I think all the Nintendo folks. So it's funny. It's just funny. Nobody's saying get rid of Chris Pratt. It's just like he is not who I envision as Mario.
I
How about
guarantee you Miyamoto was like, we got Chris Pratt in our Mario
Yes.
movie? I
We
think he
got
was like
Star-Lord?
high-fiving everyone.
Yes,
He's like,
Mario
just
"This is
high
loves
fives all
stars."
around, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we should be clear that like, you know, we're talking about the Chris's semi seriously, but like ultimately
all
this
in good
this
fun.
news doesn't
Yeah.
matter at all. Like it is completely inconsequential. The movie's gonna make $1 billion.
Yeah.
My
And
question for you guys
the rest
is
of the cast is good. Like
Yeah.
let me put this out there. Like Charlie Day's Luigi, that is just like pure chaos. As like
Yeah.
what is he gonna do with Luigi?
Wild card.
They're
Wild
wild
card.
I
cards.
mean-
Jack
Yeah.
Black. Love Jack Black in everything, especially voice work. Yes.
As an Italian American, Charlie Day and Chris as the most prominent Italian cartoon characters in the world. I'm kidding.
This is a hugely squandered opportunity to tell all the important Italian stories out there, basically, right? By not casting Italians in the role of Mario and Luigi. I mean, it's just
John Turturro should be Luigi, shouldn't he?
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Actually, he should be Luigi. That would be a
And
great Luigi.
DeVito always should have been Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
The role he was born to play.
Yes. Yes.
I think all of us were surprised when Sonic the Hedgehog, a movie that felt like it should have come out approximately 15 years before it did, was released in 2020 and then promptly made $150 million at the box office, right before the pandemic as well. Do you guys think that Mario will make more or less money at the box office than Sonic the Hedgehog? Is my
It's
question
gonna
for
make
you.
all the money in the world. It's
gonna
yeah.
make more. Yeah.
Yes, we all
More.
think it will make more.
I mean, it has to be a terrible movie.
If it is even mildly enjoyable, it will
Yeah.
make more, right?
I mean, especially given that I think Detective Pikachu actually ended up being pretty kind of fun for what it was. I wasn't expecting much with that, so maybe I'm putting hope out there. I don't know.
Just to be clear, this
My
is
kids
a
are certainly
full
excited
CG
about
movie,
it.
right?
Yeah, that is our understanding. Like, who knows? They have said it is an animated film, but maybe they're going to pull like a Lego movie type deal. So who knows?
Because I'll say this:
I
if
hope
it's
not.
fully
That's a terrible
animated,
idea for this property, like a real live Mario, Chris
You don't
Pratt in a
want to see
costume
that.
getting transformed
No.
into a cartoon. That'd be terrible.
I was going to say if it's fully CG, that I think is have a higher
Maybe that's a
ceiling
thing
than
happening.
a mixed kind of like
We lose Dave?
CG and live
I
action
think
thing.
so. Or is he waiting for ad? We
Okay,
may-
hold on. Hello.
okay.
It looks like we lost Danish.
Hello?
I can hear Danish, but you guys can't.
I cannot.
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
And
Danish, did you like close the window or something like
No, I didn't do anything. I still see it.
Okay, it's weird.
1855. It's still recording.
Yeah,
Hang
all
on,
right. I
live
gotta
stream.
stop this recording. We gotta start over again.
Shit.
Okay.
I have a backup, so it's fine.
Okay.
But let me stop this and let's just finish up that conversation. Stand
Usually,
by.
if you just all refresh, it's fine, but you can stop the recording too. It's probably safer.
Yeah, let's stop it.
All right.
Okay, starting new recording. Give me a second.
Should I download my MP3 thing? It says here.
Yeah, why don't you download your MP3 just in case?
Okay.
Did you get it?
And live stream says they can hear him.
Got it.
All right, live stream can hear him. I'm starting a new recording now.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear you. And now I do not hear Dave or Jeff.
I'm here.
Oh.
I just haven't spoken.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
here. I'm here. Okay, cool.
we're
Let's take this back a little bit. Started a new recording. Okay. So let's go for 2 minutes and then we'll do an ad. So here we go. Starting recording. Hold on, here we go. Recording 1. Recording 2. Okay. Start recording. Actually, I think the prompt was.
Mm-hmm.
They might do an animated thing like Lego Movie, and I think one of you said
Yes,
something.
I was gonna.
Go for it.
I was gonna speak on that. Yeah.
Yeah, so Danish. Okay, so they might make this like Lego Movie. I'm gonna start recording. 3, 2, 1. Then you respond as though I just said that. Okay.
Right.
All right. Here we go. Start recording. 3, 2, 1, and go ahead, Danish. Now.
So here's the thing I'll say is I believe that if it's fully CG, not CG plus live action,
Mhm.
it has a higher ceiling of box office. I think that like Detective Pikachu and Sonic both did like kind of, I don't know what Sonic did. Pikachu was like 150 domestic or something like that, which
Yeah,
honestly,
screwed up my summer wager that year
I know.
hard.
it was actually honestly a lot lower than I would have thought it was, because you think about Pokemon being like the
too.
biggest property and everything. So I really do think the live action thing kind of scared people away. Whereas if it's all animated, then that's such an easy sell, and it's done by Illumination.
people specifically, I think you mean kids, because
Sure.
my daughter is like, what are real people doing in this thing we're watching? Right? I want to see cartoons. So, and that's true of a lot of kids. I've encountered.
Interesting.
All I have to say is from the studio that brought you Minions, Mario Brothers. It's like, oh my God, Minions
right.
and Mario. It's like, I think it's gonna do better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Goombas will be the new minions.
Oh man, you're totally
They
right
deserve
about
to
that.
Be cute. Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, we're calling it now. The Mario Brothers movie starring Chris Pratt as Mario, gonna do better than Sonic. About 15 months from now, one party, like some of us may or may not look really smart or dumb, and we'll check back in. At
And
that.
also, Charles Martinet is in it.
Oh
and that's
yes,
cool.
the original
That's
voice.
nice.
Although he's only getting a cameo apparently.
Aw.
So, yeah, he's the original voice of Mario. He's only going to get a cameo.
How will
Yeah.
we know it's a him?
It's a good
How
question.
funny would that be?
Good question. Good question.
Mhm.
All right, folks, let's move on. Before we get to the reviews, I did want to talk briefly about a movie that came out this week. It's called Dear Evan Hansen. Have you guys heard of this this movie that used to be a musical?
I heard about it last week when you talked
Mhm.
about it, and you were so excited to see it, Dave.
You know, I have some thoughts on it I wanted to share, and I'm just going to go into it a little bit.
Forward to this so much.
Are you serious, Jeff, or are you being sarcastic?
I'm being absolutely serious.
Dear Evan Hansen is a movie adaptation of a musical, and I'm going to talk about the plot details of Dear Evan Hansen. So, Jeff, I assume you're okay being a
Dude,
little
I
sully
am
for this one.
locked in to get spoiled on Dear Evan Hansen.
I'm not going to spoil like the very ending or anything like that, but the trailers reveal most of the spoilers, right? So the plot of Dear Evan Hansen, the movie and musical, is there is a kid named Evan Hansen, a high school boy, who's played by Ben Platt, who was 26 years old at the time that he made the movie, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Top tier Ben, though.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I agree. And he is depressed and anxious, and he writes notes to himself that start with "Dear Evan Hansen." You know, like his therapist says, like, write notes to yourself, like encourage yourself, and try to be positive. And so he writes notes to himself that say, like, "Dear Evan Hansen." And in one of these notes, he writes about a classmate of his that he kind of is into. That classmate's brother is named Connor. and Connor discovers a hard copy of one of these notes that's like Dear Evan Hansen, and then it talks about like Connor's sister, and Connor gets really upset about it. And later, and I should point out, like, content warning, there will be like minor discussion of suicide in the next few minutes, but I do want to like call it out. But later that evening, Connor takes his own life. His parents discover Connor with this note that says Dear Evan Hansen and think that Connor and Evan Hansen were friends. And Evan Hansen, being a reasonable person, does not want to exacerbate the agony of these parents. So he's like, yeah, I guess we were friends. You know, like, yeah, we were buddies. And then they're like, well, tell us about him. And then Evan Hansen starts lying. He starts making up all these lies, you know, about all the good times they had, and he starts fabricating correspondence between the two of them, and gets up in front of the school and gives a big speech about how good friends they were, and then the speech goes viral, and the entire thing spirals out of his control. That's kind of the plot of Dear Evan Hansen. And there's a bunch of big problems with this movie, and I'll just go into two right now, briefly, on this podcast, right? One of them is that the actions that Evan Hansen takes are, I think, fairly monstrous. You know what I mean? Like, if some guy lied about this person who had committed suicide, right, and like changed your memory of them, you know, because like, yeah, we hung out all the time. They actually were a good person, you know. I guess I feel like that's like pretty unforgivable. You know what I mean? Like, you'd have to have like an extremely good reason to do that, you know. And the only way you can forgive someone doing that in a movie or a musical like Dear Evan Hansen is if you actually believe it's a high school student doing it. Because it's like, okay, I get it. You're kind of like young and naive, and you don't know really the world and the impact of your actions. That excuse immediately goes away if the guy who's playing Evan Hansen looks like he's 26 years old. Do you know what I mean? Like, he looks like, you know, Steve Buscemi. Like,
it looks like that Hulu show, Pen 15. Basically,
exactly.
But
But
30-year-old girls being teenagers, yeah.
But I don't think that show would work as well as if it was dudes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it works as well if it's dudes playing middle schoolers and like trying to get with middle school girls. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just it would come off as extremely creepy. And so I think basically what they tried to do with Ben Platt is they put all this makeup on him to make him look as young as possible. And as a result, his face looks like extremely shiny. You know, like it has no crevices at all.
Ben Platt is CG, yes.
Yeah, it looks like he came out of like Polar Express or something like that. And it could have worked if they didn't shoot virtually every single musical number in extreme close-up, which is how they shoot the musical numbers in this movie. And as a result, you're just sitting there kind of studying his face, like wondering what they did to it. And I think it just doesn't work. And it's a deadly miscalculation that the movie makes. But beyond that, it's also the plot of the movie is, you know, Evan Hansen does, like, in my opinion, extremely reprehensible and upsetting things. And I don't think the movie or musical really ever reckons with that. Like, there are people that are like, oh, well, you're not supposed to view those things that he does as positive in any way. And it's like, yeah, no, I think I get that. But a movie like this that has a character doing, in my opinion, one of the worst things you can do to someone else needs to, in some way, recognize that those things are horrible, and the character needs to deal with it in some way, or some kind of judgment needs to be rendered in one way or the other.
I don't know if musicals ever. I haven't seen a ton of musicals, but it almost seems like the mode of the genre is like, we got to focus on what's like happy and inspirational about this, right?
Right.
So I wonder if it's
That's the thing. Then that's a great point, which is that the problem with this movie is that it just doesn't work as a movie, because the way they did the movie is ultra realistic, right? So if you're watching a musical and people start breaking out into song, like in Chicago or whatever, you guys remember Chicago? Like, that was good. That was a solid movie musical, right?
Sure.
And when people start singing in that movie, they instantly are transported to like an alternate universe, right? Like, if you're singing and dancing, they're not even in the same physical location anymore, right? And so you're kind of like, oh, in this magical musical land. In Dear Evan Hansen, when people are singing, literally everyone else in the scene is still in the regular world. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like literally, it's like one person singing in the musical, and then everyone else is in regular world. And so the movie tries to make it like this ultra grounded approach, which just does not work for a topic that is this serious. You know, it makes it feel more like a psychological thriller than a musical.
It is weird, by the way, and I've mentioned this before, like living in New York and hearing the hype around Dear Evan Hansen coming about. I spent a very large part of years basically not knowing what this musical is actually about. So it is wild to see it being discussed like this right now. It almost seems like, yeah, certain things just work better on stage too, where
Exactly.
you can kind of overlook the fact that he's probably a little too old to be playing this role.
Right, because if you're watching something in a musical, the guy is like a speck in the distance, right? Whereas he is way up close when you're watching the movie.
As far as the reprehensible stuff that he does, is it like the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Is it like a series of small things where his heart's in the right place, but he's just making a decision that turns out to be more damaging? I mean, that's kind of how I know nothing about this movie or musical, but that seems kind of how you explain it. It just doesn't. You just don't buy it at a certain point.
Okay, so this is an interesting story. Do you guys know the comedian Steve Ranazisi?
No.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He was in The League. He's like the main lead in The League FX show, right? And in 2015, there was a story that broke about how in his personal life, he described working at Merrill Lynch's office on the 54th floor of the South Tower when the first plane struck the North Tower on 9/11. And in a 2009 interview, he says, like, I was there, and then the first tower got hit, and we were, like, jostled all over the place. That's what he said in the interview. And it broke that he lied about that. That did not actually happen. But he had told the story, like, multiple times. He acknowledged that his account was fiction in 2015, and he had been working in Midtown, but not at Merrill Lynch, which has no record of his employment and had no offices in either tower. I'm reading from a New York Times piece right now. And it's a really weird story to break because it's like he's not like a major figure or anything. So someone must have like turned him in basically. And the New York Times broke the story. And I remember very vividly watching his interview with Howard Stern after the story had broken. And he had described how in the time after he had moved to LA, like what the feeling was like, right? Where he was trying to get to know people. He was like very new. And somebody had like falsely heard that he was in Midtown during 9/11 and had basically introduced him at a party and was like, "Oh, hey, this is Steve. Like he just survived. Like he barely survived like 9/11." And Steve Ranazisi in the interview with Howard Stern was saying like, when that happens, you have basically 30 seconds to like correct that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like after 30 seconds has passed, you cannot correct it without coming off like extremely weird. And he missed that window. Like, so he didn't correct it because he was like in this group of new comedians and actors, and he's like, oh, he felt a lot of pressure, and he's like, I didn't correct it. And then what is he going to do later? Like 3 hours later, be like, actually, I wasn't in the, that was wrong.
That's your life now,
right?
Now
And it's
that
like
happened to you.
yeah. So then it became part of his life, and so
you can actually 30 minutes later just be like, hey guys, that's actually not true. Yeah,
Remember that
because
thing?
10 years later, your life could be ruined because you didn't do that. So maybe
I know we're talking about our favorite beers now, but I want to kind of just like leap back to that previous conversation where we were talking about where we were on 9/11.
Let's
Just real
rewind
quick, I just
here.
want to clear up a misconception.
But you can, so Devindra, I think everyone on this podcast knows me well enough to know that I would just correct it right in the moment, right?
Yeah,
like
you would do it immediately.
I would do it immediately, or like 5 minutes
yes.
later. Like,
Yes.
but I can understand.
You would stop the party, Dave. You'd be like, no. Everybody stop talking.
I relate to the feeling of not correcting someone, but I do think there's a spectrum here, right? Because I don't think like where I was on 9/11 is minor enough to just let it go. You
But
know,
you know,
I
but
think
like, you know,
that's
who
a
knows?
pretty big one.
I can understand, like, you're in a new place, you don't want to come off as weird, you know, and there's a lot of social pressure.
Just keep the
and
secret. Let
some
it
people
fester.
not as
Yeah.
strong-willed as you or I, Jeff. You know, so like, okay. So why do I bring up this example? Because I think it's fascinating, like social pressures that people feel, which mostly I don't. But the social pressures people feel, that causes them to do weird things. And so in this case, Evan Hansen, his parents think that he was friends with their son who committed suicide. And so they're like, tell us about him. And he initially tries to say, no, like I didn't write this note, you know, like he didn't
The key,
write me
by
this
the
note.
way, is that Evan Hansen is a very, very lonely kid.
Right.
And I feel like
he's
that
very
is
socially awkward. And
that
he
is
at
the
first
thing that people have latched onto in terms of loving the musical and everything. Yeah.
he at first tries to correct them. You know, he's like, no, we weren't friends. And he's like, no, they're like, no, it's okay, you can tell us. And then, but the problem, right, is in the case of Steve Rannazzisi, he just like told one lie and like stuck with it. And it's like, you know, it's not something I would do, but I understand why he made it, like why things played out for him the way he did. In Dear Evan Hansen, the guy continues to fabricate interactions and details. And in one of the most upsetting songs in the movie, his sister is like really alienated from him. And he's like, tell me what my brother said about me. And he starts saying the things that Evan Hansen feels about her as though it was her dead brother saying them. You know, like, oh, he thought you were like so cool and, you know, he wishes he could talk to you. And I'm just like, this is so messed up. You know what I mean? Like, it's upsetting. It's upsetting. And in the music, and so basically I feel like what I'm trying to say is like Evan Hansen's actions are much more unforgivable than like even the case of the Steve Rannazzisi thing I just said, right? Like it goes way beyond, you know, I took one line and extended it out. It's like, he had multiple off ramps, but he just continued doubling down throughout the entire movie.
I want to say though, Dave, I think your tolerance for this is much lower than most people because you hated
what exactly, Danish?
Your tolerance for like white lies that spiral out of control or whatever, because you also hated You've Got Mail, which people love. And I thought that was a hilarious reaction because I think it's related to this.
And Tom Hanks is kind of a monster in You've Got Mail.
Yes, he is. Like, correct. Yeah. Absolutely correct. Yes.
Yeah. So my point is that I think that there's a lot of people who love that movie and are seemingly okay with a little bit of this sort of like plot contrivance, you know, to get things going.
Unusual. It's not an unusual thing. I think of like so many John Cusack movies, you know, where he is just like kind of a turd. But he is also the guy the story is kind of revolving around too, you know, like I know a lot of people who love High Fidelity. I cannot watch that movie again, but because he is an absolute turd.
The thing that's fascinating about these stories, like Dear Evan Hansen and You've Got Mail, is it's about these guys that victimize this other party and then continue victimizing them in increasingly horrifying ways, right? Like, so it's not just like,
that's the thing that's
because
that's
like,
the thing that's different. That like you're saying victimized, which like objectively they are.
Yes, like in the case of You've Got Mail, he's destroying that woman's bookstore, even though he clearly has the power to not do that. He still does it in You've Got Mail, right? Like could easily snap his fingers, and this thing that she loves the most in the world could survive. He chooses not to do that, right? But then not only that, he needs to gaslight her and lie to her that he's like, you know, a good romantic interest as well. And that's kind of the case in Dear Evan Hansen as well. He's like, he lies about their son, but then he's like, I got to get with his sister and like lie about her dead brother to the sister as well.
But that's called dramatic tension, Dave. You put two things in tension with one another, where it's like, oh, I have this thing that I know would hurt you, but I like you a lot, so those things are in tension, and that creates drama, and that's what fiction is about.
Mm.
I actually have a third movie. Have you guys seen World's Greatest Dad, the
I
Robin
have,
Williams
yes.
movie?
Now here's the thing:
Yeah.
the plot of World's Greatest Dad is extremely similar to Dear Evan Hansen,
Yeah.
Very similar.
right? But the thing is, World's Greatest Dad was a dark comedy, guys.
Yeah, it was
I mean,
really dark.
Mrs. Doubtfire is basically the same thing too.
Right.
Yes.
Less dark than Mrs. Doubtfire, but like World's Greatest
Dude,
Dad.
if you just take the facts of Mrs. Doubtfire
Yes,
on
no,
its
I agree.
face,
Very
it
deeply
is
upset.
Pretty dark. It's
deeply
extraordinarily
dark.
disturbing.
Yeah.
I mean,
but-
it is horrifying.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you the Mrs. Doubtfire, but I would say that World's Greatest Dad nails the tone, right? Which is that
Yeah.
situation would be upsetting. There would be consequences, and Dear Evan Hansen, I feel like if I watched this musical on the stage, I would have loved it. I would have been like, amazing. And by the way, I've listened to the soundtrack like 50 times in the time since I watched this movie. I really enjoy it.
What is happening here?
Especially that one song about how, how horrible he is.
Yeah, I mean, I skip over that one, but yeah, I feel like if I watched it on stage, it'd be great because stuff that works on stage sometimes doesn't make the translation to film, and I think this is one of those cases when like a series of decisions that they made from the plot perspective, from the casting perspective, from the way they chose to film the songs, all of it combined together to just not work very well, unfortunately. So. It's a shame, but I wanted to talk about it briefly because I think a lot of people saw the trailer and they're like, "Wow, this looks pretty horrifying, right? This looks pretty terrible what this guy's doing." And but the people said like maybe the movie's different. I'm here to tell you, listener, it's not. It's not.
But you will listen to the soundtrack 50 times.
I mean, there are some real bangers on there, guys. there are some songs that slap on the Dear Evan Hansen soundtrack. And,
I'll believe you there.
yeah.
Unfortunately, they slap a grieving family, but
Metaphorically, yeah. I mean, my wife has told me to please stop listening to the soundtrack. That's how often I listen to it.
That's good.
So I'm just explaining that.
I love how you do this exquisite takedown of this movie that you adore.
Exactly. You actually love this movie.
Indeed. So anyway, those are some thoughts on Dear Evan Hansen, which is out in theaters right now. All right, folks, let's get to our review of Candyman. All right, here we go. That was from the trailer for Candyman, the newest film by director Nia DaCosta. I'm going to read the plot summary from the internet about Candyman. For decades, the housing projects of Chicago's Cabrini Green were terrorized by a ghost story about a supernatural, hook-handed killer. In present day, an artist begins to explore the macabre history of Candyman, not knowing it might unravel his sanity. So, Devindra Hardawar, this is a movie you saw before any of us. And I was really excited. Executive produced by Jordan Peele. I think he contributed to the story and the script as well.
Yes.
Nia DaCosta, an exciting director, clearly very talented. What were your thoughts on Candyman overall, and especially as it compares to the 1992 original film that was written and directed by Bernard Rose?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned most of my thoughts right after I saw it, but I will say I watched it again. I watched it with my wife, who's a huge Candyman fan, and I feel like it hits even worse the second time around. Like, this is a weird movie where it feels like the pieces are there. It is well made in many respects. Like, I love a lot of the actors. Put frickin' Coleman Domingo out there just reading audiobooks because I want to hear that guy's voice just lull me to sleep. Anything he says, I'm just like there for it. And I think Yahya Abdul-Mateen does pretty good work here. It is like the kills are interesting. There's some really brutal and like creative things, and the camera work is cool. And I think the score, like all the components, feel like individually they're pretty solid. But this movie just feels like a response to the original. And if you've seen the original Candyman and you have like certain questions about where things go after that, I feel like this movie answers the most obvious questions. it is very blunt and didactic about what it's trying to say. Whereas, I grew up watching the original Candyman long before like I understood the real like horrors of racism in the world, and like what it means for people to live in somewhere like Cabrini Greens, and in projects. So a lot of the subtlety of that movie was lost on me early on, but like what I got was, even as a kid, was that this is just like horrific. What is happening to the people here is horrific. And this story of a guy who's basically like an urban legend made real by their collective power, it kind of got under my skin as a kid. Like, I think there's something deeply terrifying about it. And that original movie is also just like very well made, very gruesome. I probably saw it way too young. Has an incredible score by Philip Glass. It feels masterful in a way. Like, it feels like unlike most horror movies, at least the stuff I was seeing in the early 90s. So I kind of really hold it in a very high regard. This one feels like, yeah, it's a response to it, but it's not really saying much. And you break down this movie, like, just rewatching with my wife, I was shocked by how fast this movie moves.
It's
And
like
I
90
don't really.
minutes long, basically.
It's,
Yeah.
I mean, and the original is very short too. The original is also, it's like 100 minutes, so a little longer.
That's like a third of No Time to Die.
Yeah.
It is.
Indeed.
It is. It's a third of that for sure. Um, but this movie just moves so fast. Almost every conversation you get with these characters is just like them very much stating either the themes of the movie or like things to just like move the plot along. This movie doesn't really have time to breathe, and I just didn't feel any fear or tension while watching this one too. Like, it almost seems like a very prosaic attempt at like bringing back the world of Candyman without like really getting the fear and getting the like what I love about horror movies, like The Shining, I'm thinking of like my favorites, the movies that really like just emphasize a sense of dread, Ring and Ringu, horror movies that just make you feel uncomfortable and like creeped out as you're watching them. And this movie never did that. It has some cool kills, it has some really interesting characters, but the like myth of Candyman and everything, I think it works really hard to try to sell it, and certainly the idea of like generational violence. And this movie does some really great work with hand puppets or stick figures, basically.
Shadow puppets, I
Yeah.
think.
Shadow
They
puppets,
look
yeah.
like paper cutouts almost.
Yeah.
Paper cutouts, and I believe those were done by Kara Walker, the artist. And I think those are like among the most creative elements of this movie. She's done like a bunch of like great art. In Brooklyn, I've seen some of her stuff. So there are elements of like really cool things here, but I don't think it all really comes together. And I want a horror movie, especially something that's trying to resurrect Candyman, very literally. I want it to evoke that sense of dread. I just never really got that. I do have a feeling that they just chopped up, hacked up uh, quite a few scenes from this movie, especially towards the end. It feels like we lose almost an entire reel where things start happening, and we're like, oh, how do we get here? It seems like a lot has happened to this character since we last saw them. So if there is a longer cut or something eventually, I'd really be interested in seeing that. I just, I wanted more for this movie. I don't hate it. I think I remember seeing the Candyman sequels back in the day, and those were just outright awful. So it feels at least better than those, but I wanted something more. It didn't quite hit that for me. Go watch the original Candyman, folks. If you have never seen it, that is it's a very singular film.
All right. Devin, you're not a huge fan. Danish Syed, curious what your overall thoughts were on Candyman.
So I saw Candyman, the original, a long time ago, but it had been so long that I couldn't remember if I actually saw it or just saw like bits and pieces of it. So I rewatched that as
So
well.
you
In
started lying to everyone about whether you'd seen it
Yes.
or not.
Exactly. So I ended up watching them back to back, and it was actually a very cool way to do it. I don't disagree with anything Devinder said, actually, except I really liked it. Like, to me, I agree that it's not very like tense, or there's no like dread in it. But I think the cinematography is incredible. It looks awesome. There's great actors in it, and some of the mythology I really really like. I like the way they change some of the plot and stuff. There's interesting things going on, So I liked it a lot. And yeah, I mean, I think it's got like, it's really interesting to see it back to back, like I said, because the premise of Candyman is urban legends. And I really loved how the new one changes the origin, or like there's multiple versions of it in the retelling, and
Right,
how
right. Every
Candyman
generation
works.
has their own Candyman, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and so like it's an amazing way to retcon but not retcon Candyman. You know, I think it's a really great uh, you know, way to do that. And even sort of like toward the end, which I won't get into, like the rules of Candyman are also kind of like explored in different ways. And so yeah, I overall I liked it quite a bit.
Jeff Kanata, your thoughts?
Well, Dave, I guess my thoughts on Candyman are best summed up in the form of a limerick. The titular adversary is depicted a bit contrary to what I expect, which made me reflect, but it ends up not being too scary.
All right.
I agree with everything that's been said. I agree
Yeah.
with everything that's been said. I agree very, very much with Devindra. There is a scene in this film early on where Anthony, I believe is the name of the character who is the artist, he has a piece that he is asking for some feedback on, some opinion on, and his girlfriend, who is also an art
She's like a curator. Or
curator.
something.
That's the word
Yeah.
I was looking for. Thank you, curator.
Yeah.
Gives him an opinion and basically gives my review for the movie, which is very similar to Devindra's
Yes.
review for the
Yeah,
movie,
yeah.
which is basically like, yeah, no, it's great, but like it's all right there on the surface. There's no
It's
like-
it's a little on the nose.
yeah, it's like she's like just reviewing the movie. It's very strange because I
well,
feel like
you combine that with what an actual art critic says in the movie too, that the film is trying to reboot, except it
yeah.
Yeah,
also
she says
absolutely describes the movie.
a character asks her, "What do you think?" And she says, "Well, it's a pretty literal approach. It's
Yeah.
a pretty literal
Yes,
approach.
yes.
Yeah.
Not much
Yeah.
room for viewer interpretation." You know.
Yeah.
Yes, it was just like it's very strange how the movie just comes out and says it. I've been working for months on this, and they just tweeted it out.
Well, here's the thing, Jeff. If your movie is very didactic and literal, then if you have a character in it commenting on something else that's didactic and
Yeah.
literal, that makes it okay, basically.
Oh, I see.
Sure.
I agree that the movie is dripping with style. It is. There are some really cool, inventive sequences, and when we get to spoilers, we can talk a little bit more specifically. But like Devindra said, any one element of the movie, there's not really much to criticize. It's each element is very well done, and it's just not greater than the sum of its parts, unfortunately. And I feel like as much as I kind of took away from it what I believe is intending for me to take away from it, which is a powerful statement, and I think perhaps an important one, certainly an interesting one. I think it's attempting to use this genre film to do a thing. It does the thing, but it doesn't really create, I think, an effective genre film. I think it's for my money, at least. It didn't. At no point was I scared. And you know me, I'm a scaredy pants.
It is actually, yeah. We gotta work on getting you to watch horror movies. I know.
Yes.
It's not your favorite thing.
No, I was a little nervous about this, quite honestly. And at no point did I feel uncomfortable or scared or hiding my eyes behind my hands, as I sometimes do. Ultimately, it just didn't. I agree with you also, Devindra, that there's a point at which it feels like we missed a beat. It feels like there's
A whole bunch of beats.
Yeah, are there
at this
scenes in
point.
here that get us from this point to that point? Because boy, that just made a huge leap. So I don't know if that is the case or if that's just a flaw in the script. But ultimately, while it was a movie that I don't think is bad, and certainly was an experience that I didn't, it wasn't that I wasn't enjoying myself. I wasn't uninterested. it just at the end of the day, I was like, kind of why
Yeah.
did we do it this way? You know?
That happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll share a few quick thoughts, and then let's get to some spoilers. I think that the movie looks great. Opening credit sequence was incredible in my opinion. I
Amazing.
was like,
Just flip
one of
those
the best.
cameras upside down.
yeah, I was
That's
like,
all I
this,
want
yeah,
to
this
it
see.
is
was
amazing.
wild.
Love the
All the
score, love the
time.
credit, like love the look
Yeah.
of the film, and I even think the whole setup is great. There's so many interesting ideas
Mm-hmm.
in the movie. I think actually too many interesting ideas. Like literally, like it's just the movie cannot bear the weight of all the ideas it has, and unfortunately, I think the final 30 to 40 minutes is a complete mess. Like per what you guys have said, feels like they skipped over a bunch of stuff, and then towards the end, I've read several reviews, and I think many people, including myself, have difficulty understanding literally what actually happens at the end.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
and
that's
like
true.
what
too.
the movie is trying to say about its themes and about its characters, and I think that's a problem because movies don't need to like spell things out for you exactly, but they shouldn't leave you. They should leave it open to interpretation, but they shouldn't leave you
Right.
like completely confused. as
It
to what's
leaves you
going on.
asking the wrong questions, I
Exactly,
think. And
exactly. Yeah.
it also it will just outright say things like gentrification is real bad, guys. That's it. That's all that's the movie. That's what we're
Right.
doing. And they have their first major conversation in the movie is that.
Yeah.
So it is, give me some mystery, something.
Well, it's making we talked about this with Ariel a couple weeks ago, but like
Mhm,
it's making the subtext text, right? Like
Absolutely.
the idea is I should be able to feel why gentrification is horrifying and terrible without someone just saying it to me, like literally outright.
These aren't conversations a group of friends would have together.
yeah.
Things. It's like that. It feels
or
inorganic.
I think they
in a way,
might
too.
have them, but I don't think they belong in this movie. You know what I mean? Like it's like it just shouldn't. You should. I should experience the
Mhm.
themes through the story as opposed to the characters saying outright what they think. And yet
Sure.
bafflingly, it is both too didactic and not clear enough about what it's trying to say, in my opinion. Anyway,
Yeah.
those are some quick thoughts. Let's get to spoilers real quick. Talk a little bit about Candyman starting right now.
Now you're looking for the secret.
You're gonna see this coming.
No,
But you won't find it because, of course,
you're not gonna see this coming.
you're not really looking.
I have been puzzling over how it works.
You don't really want to work it out.
I have been dying to tell you. I want to tell you my secret now.
You want to be fooled.
I think there's a lot that this movie brings up about what it's like to be an artist, the pressures of being an artist who's also black, the idea of black trauma being something that is commoditized, and how gentrification can be kind of something that artists are accused of participating in. Like, there's all these kind of interesting ideas that this movie brings up, and unfortunately, at the end, I wasn't really left with a clear vision of like what Candyman is supposed to represent, right? Like in the original, I think it's much clearer, and in this movie, it's kind of not clear to me why things are happening, like why Yahya Abdul Mateen II is like starting to decompose, and what's going on. Like he's becoming Candyman at the end. I get that, right?
Yes.
But then the Candyman in this movie is different than the Candyman in the first film, right? The
He's a
Candyman in this
superhero.
movie,
Different character. Yeah.
yeah, he's very much, but not even different character, like different ethos, right? Like
He's a superhero in this movie.
he's basically like a tool that is used
Mm-hmm.
to like avenge black people.
Yeah,
in this
you
movie, right?
evoke the superhero to
Yeah.
do
Right.
to
Except when he kills a young girl for no reason.
Right.
well,
it's-
I think
so
we're supposed to believe that
confused.
he only kills bad people.
mm.
Was the sister bad?
Yeah, and that's
This
the thing.
movie has random flashbacks
Right.
for to establish about basically like backstory about some of these characters. And Coleman Domingo's character, he's the kid from the beginning. He had a sister, apparently, who was killed by Candyman.
Right, and not
And-
only that, but
yeah.
also what's her name's character, Brianna's character. Her dad kills himself.
Her dad kills
Dude,
himself.
that was the
That's
most
the-
disturbing fucking scene in the entire
Yep.
movie. It had nothing to
Yep.
do with
Yeah.
Candyman.
Right,
It,
and
that scene is so dark and so fucked up, and for I think kind of no reason. Like I
Well,
don't know.
it's a nod to like intergenerational trauma, right? The idea that
Yeah.
like the trauma is passed down from generation to generation. I believe. I'm sorry. I agree with you though, Jeff. That
Mhm.
it doesn't feel like if you're going to invoke that, you really need to follow through with it, and I don't feel like the movie does that
Bro,
personally.
show
Yeah.
us him as a person or something before that too. Like it just it's wild because it comes out of nowhere right after Brianna experiences. You know, she comes across those bodies and like she's tying it to her own past, but also like it is supposed to be a bit of like character background stuff. Like, is she attracted to her disturbed artist boyfriend because of her father?
Right.
And that stuff just feels gross, like
Yeah.
real gross shorthand.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I do think the ending, Jeff, you're talking about him, Candyman's like the superhero you summon.
Mhm.
I think maybe, there's a chance I'm being too charitable with this. My take on it was that because the urban myth is so fluid and ever changing, that Candyman is whatever you want him to be, whatever the popular consciousness is. So when he becomes this avenging spirit, that's not what he always was. That is something that they have now started to do. And so he has become that. That was my take.
I would love if the movie had set up more of that with the other characters and like the other kills, which I think individually all those kills are pretty cool.
I love all the
The-
mirror stuff. It
the
was so
the
cool.
one in the art studio, like him
Yeah.
in the actually on the projected screen, I believe, and the mirrors, like
The compact on the floor of the bathroom.
Yeah.
Crazy.
so good, so good. And then the slow pull away from the apartment building, like it's
That's-
just all glass.
yeah, like
beautiful. Yeah.
all that stuff. Like I totally understand and I agree that it's not scary.
Mhm.
And maybe this is just my take because I very rarely get scared with movies. Like it just doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't affect me as much as I would used to, And so when I watch movies like this, I'm kind of like, I'm happy with cool, like compact mirror shots and like cool mirror shot, like I'm entertained and I'm like kept in the movie with that. Although I do agree that, if it was scary,
Right,
it would have
right.
made this movie a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Like think of what Ari Aster does in Hereditary. Or
That was
something, right?
it's
Where
one of the
it's just,
scariest
like,
movies I've ever seen.
pure dread. Like your skin is crawling, and that is kind of how, as a kid watching the original Candyman, kind of felt with
Yeah.
me. Felt to me like it got under my skin. I can never really forget that movie. It is one of those things. And one thing I want to point out too is that the overall twist, by the way, like if you guys don't remember, like the twist that Yahya Abdul Mateen's character is the baby from Candyman, that was supposed to be a big deal. But I also feel like for people who watched the original movie, it's like I think everyone's like, what happened to that baby?
Well, I mean, I
Did-
like,
yeah.
like I said, I watched it back to back, so I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
his name is Anthony. Oh, okay. And
clearly.
it like, immediately, it's
Clearly.
like, okay, that's cool.
It's not a huge surprise there because the whole Vanessa Williams scene was supposed to be like a big reveal, like, oh, now we know exactly how this all ties in.
That was also
Um,
super weird because she like didn't age at all.
Yeah,
I know. I was like, that's his
Jeez.
mom.
I know.
She looks exactly the same she did in the original
Yeah.
movie. Like it
Yeah.
is absolutely
That
wild.
could be a love interest for him.
Yeah.
But the idea of the original film, even of like Candyman just took this baby. You have to take care of this baby for a while. Did Candyman change this baby's diapers? Did Candyman like do all the actual baby duties? Because basically that's what's happening here. Is this baby is the second coming of Candyman? I thought that was kind of cool. And this
Candyman,
movie-
give you tummy time.
exactly. That would be the original Candyman, just reading him bedtime stories. Like that is a great voice. Sure, yeah, I'd be down with that. But yeah, by the point once he visits Vanessa Williams, once he visits his mother, and he sort of like just staggers back to the old apartments, and he walks into a room where I think he has a premonition of the gunshots too, because you see two flashing, like basically the same shot from the future when the cops kill him. I guess that's what's supposed to be happening, but from that point on, it feels like we've lost at least 10 or 15 minutes
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
describing what happens to this character and his journey towards becoming mutating into the Candyman. Like this movie almost goes into the Fly territory in terms
Oh,
of the
yeah.
body horror here. Like
Definitely.
he is transforming into the Thing. Yeah. Would have loved to see more of that and more of like that journey of him getting to the point where he is in the chair in that church. Whereas, yeah, we can't just jump there. Coleman Domingo goes wild, and that's it. You know.
Yeah, that's the part I had
yeah.
a hard time with.
Yeah.
Is that speech in the church just seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, oh, I'm evil now, and here's the explanation. It's like, whoa.
I also
did
found
not
it super
earn that.
confusing that Brianna like breaks out of the church, but then she seems to emerge into the out from the cellar of an apartment at the Cabrini Green. I was like,
I think
wait,
they're
where
a
are
little
they?
connected. They're like right next to each other.
Yeah, no,
supposedly.
fair enough.
But
Yeah.
the geography and the logic of like where people are does not make sense a lot of the time in this movie. I will say, Coleman Domingo, get that? Is that guy doing much voice work? Like he would do a wild Joker one day. Just like that laugh, like him being sultry and then going straight into the cackling. Like, man, I want the best things for him. I love him in everything I see him in.
Everyone in this movie is super talented, you know.
Very true.
And
Very true.
I want the best for all of them for sure. But yeah, the ending, I just thought it just feels super rushed. And at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm left not necessarily feeling, I think, the impact that was desired, which is some kind of emotional catharsis from this guy becoming Candyman. You know, the scene with him coming in and murdering those cops is like kind of like a cool, like well executed from a just like a genre piece,
stylistic,
right?
yeah.
Exactly. But like as kind of the end button on what the themes of this movie are supposed to be, it felt a little bit confused overall when I look at the
The
whole
end
thing.
button is Tony Todd, by the way. Like
Fair
you
enough.
see Tony Todd come back, who is the bad guy. You know, like he is the one everybody was afraid of.
Right.
So is by Yahya Abdul Mateen's character basically also becoming Candyman? Is he empowering the overall myth of? Like,
I think
what
that's
is
the case, but I guess like fundamentally Tony Todd's mission or proclivities were a little bit different, right, than Yahya Abdul Mateen's are shown in this movie. Also, by the way, if you recall in the last movie, Helen, who's played by Virginia Madison, like becomes the Candyman, kind of, right? In that
she
movie,
becomes like intoxicated with him a little bit. Like he almost like possesses her to a certain degree. Yeah.
No. But like at the end of the movie, like I think it's Xander Berkeley, right? That's like saying into the mirror like her name 5 times and then she appears, right? Like
that's right.
So
right.
I just, I feel like this movie is so connected with the first one, but like it's very different.
She becomes her own myth,
right?
Like that is
that's
actually explained in this movie.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So,
what do you guys think is the upper bound for how long you can take between Candymans and still hit the 5 mark?
It's a good
I
question.
thought that a lot while watching.
It's a good question. This is like the don't feed them after midnight Gremlins thing. Like, isn't it always technically
when is
after midnight?
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How long can I? If I have other words between Candymans, does that reset it?
Right. It's a good question. It's a good question. One that and I think we're gonna have to keep asking it, unfortunately, because I don't think the movie does anything to clear it up, Jeff. So, all right. Well, those are some of the thoughts on Candyman. I thought again, many elements of it were really well done, but end of the day, it felt a little bit confusing/confused to me.
Actually, I have a question for Danish. Actually, how does this movie use Chicago? Because I've read from a lot of locals who are like, this doesn't even actually portray the city in the way that seems authentic or realistic.
There's that one river shot.
Yeah, there was that one shot. This is like the only one that I recognized. Everything else in this kind of like
one
art
from Perfect
world.
Strangers, I think.
Yes,
yeah,
it's amazing. So
standing tall.
On that note, actually, I would encourage everyone to go on YouTube and just type in Cabrini Green documentary, and there's a lot of content out there. There's a very famous sort of PBS documentary from 1982 that's like super wild, and it's kind of like it's a little cringy to watch a little bit because there's lots of sort of othering and like kind of racist shit going on. But if you look past that into the actual sort of like facts of it and all the footage and interviews and everything, it's kind of nuts. So yeah, and I remember when I was growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, I knew about Cabrini Green. It was on the news. It was something that was kind of ever present. So, I don't think the new one really like feels like Chicago as much as the original one did. So yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I think that
kind of makes
the Cabrini Green as an actual place where that's a source of much controversy from an urban development perspective is accurate. My wife has spent a significant portion of her life in Chicago, and I don't know that she thought it was accurate, but like certainly a lot of it was filmed in Chicago, and I think like
Mhm,
architecturally that's represented fairly well in the movie, is my understanding.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
I'll say this about the original movie, by the way. Like, I think one reason it's important and it's been remembered so well is that it was a movie that was actually shot in the projects,
Yeah.
you know, and it didn't treat the people who lived there as these like othered monsters, right? The
Yeah.
monster was living among them. And for my wife and her family, like, you know, she grew up in projects in Brooklyn. I go visit them all the time there. It was a thing that you never got to see, especially in like the 80s and the 90s when
you never got to see in movies. You're saying, right?
in movies,
Yeah.
like in movies, like, yeah, just, hey, these are human beings who are living here. This is a very particular type of housing, and the fact that they live there does not make them, you know, any less than you, which is honestly, even in the 90s was a thing. Like when I think of like the Clinton administration and stuff. Like everybody was kind of vilifying
Yeah.
people of color and certainly people who lived in projects. So to have a movie like Candyman have a gorgeous Philip Glass score, you know, and like treat these people like human beings, I think was a very rare thing. And I do kind of miss that here too, because this movie is essentially about the gentrifiers who are kind of like living within the ashes of the you know, that those projects.
All right, folks, those are our thoughts on Candyman. Let's move on. Let's get to weekly plugs.
We're going to do weekly plugs.
Did the music just come through really slow for you guys?
Zencaster has been doing that. You hear it for some reason as the host, but everybody else and the recording, it will be fine.
I see.
It
Okay.
sounded fine to me.
I don't
All
know
right.
what that weird bug is, but I've experienced it a number of times on DLC. And I'm like, well, that sucked, and everybody's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that was weird. I pressed play and it sounded like
And he's like, what?
we're gonna do weekly plugs. That's what
Yeah.
I just heard. But you guys heard the
Yeah.
regular music, so
That's right.
hopefully...
And the regular music will be recorded on
The live stream said they
output.
heard slow music. So the live stream
Oh,
hears
really?
whatever your
Yeah,
computer.
Oh, yeah,
the
you're
live
getting-
stream hears
yeah,
what I hear.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we're gonna keep this all in there anyway, so it's fine. People can experience it. Weekly
That's
plugs.
scarier than Candyman.
Yeah.
Weekly
Yeah.
plugs, the part of the show each week where we plug something we have created or that someone else has created that we recommend. I did a full video review of Dear Evan Hansen on YouTube. If you want to check out more of my thoughts on that movie, even more, check it out on YouTube. I'll link to it in the show notes.
Do you
Divin
even
Your Hardware.
have thoughts
Yeah.
on Dear Evan Hansen, Dave?
Here's the thing. Let me just say one. This is not even about Dear
You
Evan
went
Hansen.
to see that movie, you know, expressly to take it down too, which is it's hilarious.
I don't
You-
know
you
about
did this
expressly to take it
yourself.
down. I was certainly willing to give it a chance, but I think that
You were excited to do this. It's funny.
well,
Yeah.
here's the thing. I generally, I know people may not believe this, but I generally try. Like every movie is a miracle. I generally try not to be scathing towards movies. Like in general, I try because I know how hard movies are to make. The exception to that policy is when I feel like a movie can actually be damaging.
Sure,
You know, like
yeah.
when I feel like people can like the potential for people taking the wrong message from this is so high that I feel I need to like invade, like I need to weigh in against it to some degree, and that's kind of why I've been so vocal about this one. You know, I try not to be this vocal in general about a movie I don't like. Like the best way to do to treat a movie you don't like is just not talk about it, which is generally what I do. But in this case, I feel like I'm just not on board with what this movie's trying to say, and so therefore got to go in on it. So anyway,
Except for the soundtrack, which is fucking amazing.
oh
and
my
you
gosh,
listen to it 1,000
freaking
times.
slaps so much. Love it.
Buy it on vinyl, buy it on CD,
Yep.
digital. Have
I
it on every-
cannot stand this movie's message unless it's in the form of song, in
Correct.
which I will listen to over and over again.
100%. Devinder Hardware, your weekly recommendation? Or your weekly
I
plug?
want to recommend everybody. Yeah, recommendation. I want everybody to check out the latest episode of the Engadget podcast. We talked about all the new Microsoft Surface devices. It is it's busy hardware season, and yeah, Microsoft announced a bunch of stuff. And I personally am always more interested in the weird shit Microsoft has going on. Like, just how are they going to be different? Whereas, you know, we're going to get a new iPhone every year, folks. Like, don't worry about it. That's like clockwork. Whereas Microsoft has a laptop that kind of pulls out, the screen kind of pulls out towards you because the Surface Book is dead, because it was never a good idea to do hardware like that, as I'm sure you remember, Jeff.
Yep.
So yeah, they're not doing the Surface Book anymore. They have something called the Surface Laptop Studio. I'll be reviewing that soon too, but you can check out our initial thoughts over at the Engadget podcast.
All right, Jeff Kanata, your weekly plug.
You know, with Danish here, it really is. I've mentioned this a number of times, you know, without him present. But I feel like with him here, I owe it to everyone who was involved to say, you know, that I am only doing Cameo videos. I'm only on Cameo doing limericks for folks at cameo.com/Jeff Kanata. Only doing that because of the friendship, the thoughtfulness, the motivation of one person. And you know, Danish, I'm just so grateful that you stepped up and you encouraged me when no one else would.
You're
So-
very welcome. It warms my heart every time you bring it up. I'm very grateful that you got joy out of it, and then it inspired you to do it as well.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks,
I'm
man.
glad somebody recommended it to you, Jeff. Check out Jeff's Cameo. Danish Syed, a weekly recommendation or plug from you.
Yeah, so I want to recommend a YouTube channel called Did You Know Gaming. It's something that it's a really cool. It's basically like a trivia style thing where they tackle a few topics and talk about trivia, but it's pretty in depth and really fascinating. And I'm going to be referencing it in our review for Free Guy. So yeah, Did You Know Gaming YouTube channel.
Cool. Those are weekly plugs. I also want to recommend you follow Danish Syed on Twitter, twitter.com/_Danish Syed or @_Danish Syed.
That's right.
Check him out there as well. It's a good place to keep in touch with him and learn about what he is working on. And of course, our weekly plug for the podcast. If you want to support us at patreon.com/filmpodcast, head over there to sign up for ad-free episodes or bonus After Dark episodes. Never donate if it in any way causes you any kind of financial hardship whatsoever. But we are so grateful for the thousands of people that have signed up to donate to us and help
Thank
us
you.
to make the Filmcast a sustainable podcast for a long time to come. So thanks to everyone for doing that. Again, patreon.com/filmpodcast. This week on the After Dark, we're going to be discussing part 2 of the Preacher tweets, as well as Star Wars Vision. So is it Visions or Vision, by the way? Visions?
I think it's plural.
Vision.
Yeah.
Star Wars
Plural.
Visions. on
Multiple
Disney Plus.
episodes,
All
yeah.
right.
Multiple
There we go.
visions.
Let's get to our review of Free Guy. Okay. Actually, we should discuss what is a spoiler for this film. Because the trailers did not give away the main plot of the movie.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I think for this one, maybe second act stuff. And saying this is about the lost game code is not going to spoil the movie for people.
I think it's I would argue it's a spoiler. It's not in the trailers at all.
okay, sure.
So
I don't think it affects your enjoyment of the movie.
oh, I
but
agree.
yeah,
I
that's
agree.
fine.
But I just in the spirit of keeping the spoilers out, or we could say, like, I can give the warning that we are going to talk about that, and then and go from there. So why don't we
That's
do
fine.
that?
I can-
yeah.
There's a way. The one idea is like you could say about the game code stuff, but leave out all of the AI part of it because that's the big spoiler. I think.
I mean, that's the trailer. That's yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
These things are self-aware. They're video game characters who are self-aware. That's the movie. That's what the trailer is telling.
Yes, I agree. I agree completely. But it has nothing
Yeah.
to do with this like guy trying to get his code back. Like that's not in the trailer
Yeah.
at all.
It's
So
Okay.
I think we could do a pre-spoiler segment. and
okay.
just not mention
So let's
that
just
stuff.
try to be
It's not
pretty
important.
quick in the
Yeah.
pre-spoiler segment. Is my request then. All right, here we go. That was from the trailer for Free Guy. Here's the plot summary from IMDb. Quote, a bank teller discovers that he's actually an NPC inside a brutal open world video game, end quote. Now, I want to give a quick note that one of the things that's interesting about this movie, I think, is that the trailers reveal very little about a lot of the driving action in the movie. And I think that's just a really interesting approach. The movie, despite that, has done extremely well. It's made over $100 million domestically in the era of COVID. And I think that it's awesome that you have a star-driven vehicle based off of an original concept that can still do well at the box office, presuming, of course, that people saw it in conditions that were safe. So I
Original
am.
concept.
I think we can debate the debate original
Yeah,
here.
original's
But
the
yeah,
concept.
yeah. If you're remixing literally everything that exists right now in video game culture, I don't know how original that is, but okay.
Not based off of
We can argue
existing
that.
IP. Okay, how about
Yes,
that?
there you
Or
go.
Yes,
not
technically
directly
true.
based off of existing IP. So,
Technically true.
Danish Syed, you have worked in video games for a
Yeah,
long time.
over
now.
over 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And this
But
is
have
a
you
mo-
ever worked in video games?
I mean, does
Maybe you're
VR
in
count?
one right now.
Yeah.
We are going to try to be pretty vague about what's happening in the movie before we get to spoilers. But I guess overall, what were your thoughts on Free Guy, not only as a movie, but as a movie that is set inside a video game largely?
Overall, I thought it was fine. It was, pretty enjoyable. I just don't think it hangs together very well. In fact, it's funny. I think a lot of the comments you guys had on Candyman can be applied to this as well. Lots of great ideas, too many great ideas, doesn't hang together, but it's kind of in this very lighthearted, fun wrapper that makes it kind of go down easy. But at the same time, I think that's kind of my biggest problem with it is that it glosses over so many interesting things
Mm.
because it wants to keep it kind of light and fun and fast. So that's kind of like that's the basic takeaway. I have a ton of things to say in spoilers about the actual content. I will say one thing that kind of occurred to me is just in terms of, just depicting video game culture and, the vocabulary and of games themselves. A lot of times you wonder if they know what they're talking about. And
Mhm.
in this
Like
movie,
a lot of times in the movie, or a lot of times in general when you're watching these movies.
in general, when you're watching
Yeah.
the movie, you're like, have they even played a video game? Like that basic.
Wait,
Yeah,
sorry,
who are
sorry.
they
This
speaking
movie
to?
or these types of movies, Danish?
So I'm saying in general, these types of movies,
Got it.
that is the feeling that I get
Got it. Yep.
with as opposed to this movie where I do think they know what they're doing, but have chosen to not do it.
Yes.
Uh,
You know, there's that thing in movies where they say the thing that is supposed that to the other characters in the movie is gobbledygook,
Yeah.
is like supposed to be talking over their heads.
yes.
Yeah.
And they assume it is talking over the heads of the audience.
Yes.
But there are people in the audience for whom it is not over their heads.
Yeah.
In this particular case, it's probably most of their audience.
Yeah.
And they just misjudge where over the heads lives.
There is so much to say about their audience because I think that's the biggest problem is the movie is constantly going back and forth between different audiences. I think they want to please everybody. And so this is my biggest problem with it actually is like, who is this movie for? Because on one end you have like these really kind of core gamer references and these Twitch streamers make cameos and that sort of thing. And on the other hand, you have mom's basement jokes.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't
Yeah.
make any
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah.
So I think they're
Loser
trying
gamer eating Twizzlers, living with his mom.
to. Yeah, crazy.
Don't eat it.
Not a
Right.
small part of the movie either. Not
Yeah.
a throwaway joke, like
Yeah.
a major
right.
section of the movie.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think you can do both. So anyway, that's another tangent we can get down. But so overall, it was kind of like fine. I didn't hate it. I thought it had a lot of good ideas, but there's a lot of stuff. It was kind of it's holding itself back. I think maybe in a lot of ways.
All right. Danish thought it was all right. Devindra Hardware, curious what your thoughts were on Free Guy.
Yeah, I did not go into this movie expecting much, but I do think any movie that opens with an extended Channing Tatum action sequence will get,
Well,
a
in one
decent
long
amount of-
continuous shot, no less.
one long continuous shot, a decent amount of default stars just for that.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
I had a lot of fun with this movie. It hesitates. We have not seen him in a while, but also I think it's genuinely fun. I'd say it's very good, close to being great, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of these things. It's probably too long, but there's a nice emotional core here. that I really like. Not specifically Ryan Reynolds, but more like the relationship between Joe Keery and Jodie Comer, who I really enjoy in this movie. Like also her
She's great.
doing
Yep.
American girl voice is very strange to me, and I don't know if I'll get used to that. But she
And it's
is a
funny
lot of
that that's
fun.
I love the twist
That's
on it.
the
Where
big
like,
one.
yeah,
That's her
the
real.
fake
That's her
one.
real voice in the movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think she's great. Ryan Reynolds this is what Ryan Reynolds does. Like he's very
Yeah.
good at being the like vacant sort of like good looking action hero guy, and also being like just playing kind of an idiot, which is what you kind of need with this character. He's actually good at that. So he's good at selling who this character is. I just had a lot of fun watching it, but it also feels like man, there's just so much missed potential here. You've got Taika Waititi as like a big the boss man.
I
And
can't
he's-
remember. Speaking on Taika,
Mhm.
real quick,
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I burst out laughing at an introduction of a character,
Yep.
not even seeing his face. He steps out of a car and walks away from the camera, and I immediately started laughing out loud because
It's a
It
good.
was
It's a good
ridiculous.
character intro for that.
It's
guy.
a good
Yeah.
intro.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
like
good
it.
intro.
I like
And
it.
yet they don't
Mo-
I think they rely a lot on his like inherent silliness. Like I don't
Right.
feel like they tap into it enough. The stuff he's saying is not that funny. It's more like his mannerisms and the fact that he's wearing like a robe length hoodie, which is kind of fun. Like he is really into that character. I just wish they had like devoted more time to like doing cool stuff with him as a villain. So it's stuff like that, stuff like the like loser gamer stuff, which is feels straight out of the South Park EverQuest episodes, like it is exactly that. And like that joke is 10 years old. Gaming is mainstream now. Everybody games. You've got Pokemon, you've got like major streamers in this movie. You don't need to do that other dumb thing. And I almost wonder, like, I don't know if the folks who've been in this movie have responded to it. I'm sure they're not going to complain too much about this movie. That probably paid them well, but I would like to see like people who actually participate in this movie, if they have any response to that. That's just seems a little like silly and messy, but hey, it's a good watch. It's a good watch. And I think Zachary Levi, it's Levi, right? Not Levy. I've liked sorry, not Zachary, that's the other
Zach
guy.
Penn.
Zach Penn. No, I'm thinking of Sean Levi.
Sean Levy.
Oh, Sean Levy. Yeah.
Sean Levy.
Sean Levy is the
Sean Penn?
director. Sean Penn.
Get all four of those guys together.
All four of those guys. I've liked things he's made a lot of stuff, like
Real
a lot
Steel.
of disposable stuff, but Real Steel
Steel rules.
is good and very good.
Such an
We talked
underrated
about
movie.
We reviewed it. Yeah,
Well,
great Hugh Jackman movie. Great like big giant robot movie. And I think like
Stranger
he has
Things.
a good. He's done a lot of Stranger Things, right? Like
Yeah.
he is like the driving director behind
Yeah.
it too, I believe. So I think like he has a good like geeky sensibility to him as well, and I think this movie kind of taps into that. It's just like, yeah, I would have liked a little more. Would have liked a little more polish because, like, yeah, I don't know if they already greenlit a sequel, right?
Did
think
they?
that's
I
the
didn't. I
story.
didn't
Yeah,
hear
it's on
about that.
IMDb.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
that's happening. So like we're gonna get more of this world, and I hope they polish it for the next go around because I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed all these people, and I hope Channing Tatum makes a return because I miss seeing him in action movies.
Guys, I'm gonna list. I'm gonna put two directors on either side of you. Okay, and thanks to Ryan Oliver for this inspiration here. Okay, but on one director, okay, has made movies like the following: Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Jaws,
You know where this is going.
Raiders of the
Martin
Lost Ark.
Scorsese. It's Martin Scorsese.
Okay, so again, one director has made movies like Jaws and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Catch Me If You Can and so on. Okay, other director has made movies like The Internship, Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, and Real Steel and Date Night. Okay, that's that. So one director has made one set of movies. The other director has made another set of movies. Both of those directors then went on to make movies that take place largely inside video games and deal to some extent with video game culture.
You just like ruined a Boom Goes the Dynamite for yourself. Sir.
I'm just saying that it is staggering to me which one of those directors made the better film. And I think this movie is way better than Ready Player One in my opinion.
100%.
And
Sure.
But
the
it's
idea
also better than there's a lot of movies it's better than, and I think it's a low bar. I'm just saying, low bar. For Ready Player One.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, I would never expect Sean Levy would outdo Spielberg at the video game movie genre. But in any case, Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on Free Guy?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on Free Guy are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
It's a 2 limerick night, and that's wonderful, Jeff.
It's a double limerick night. Yeah, I didn't know which movie we were doing first, and I didn't want to disappoint the folks.
Appreciate that, Jeff.
Cameo.com/Jeff Kanata. All right, here we go. It's got enough fun going on. There was never a time when I yawned, but it doesn't quite soar. You don't get a high score mashing up Lego Movie and Tron.
All right.
This movie's the
It's a
plot
thinker.
of Tron. It's Tron as a romantic comedy, by the way. Anyway, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. There's some fun stuff. There's one moment where it's like, oh, this movie is made by Disney, I guess.
Yep.
That's kind of fun. Ryan Reynolds is just very watchable. He's funny and charming, and he can carry a movie like this. And there's enough goofy, fun stuff for him to do. I think the first act of this movie is really fun, as Devendra said. Like the setup, the establishing of the Grand Theft Auto like video game world that we're inside is really fun because it lets all the rules of action filmmaking be completely broken. You just whatever you want. Camera can go anywhere. We're inside a video game. Who cares? Explosions everywhere. People, and there's a lot of really fun inside gamer jokes of seeing, if you were inside a video game and you watched people just jump up and down over and over and over again in the corner of a wall. That's that stuff. Very fun. And the money is on the screen in this movie. There's a lot of cool kinetic stuff that happens. But the longer it goes on, and it is over long, and the longer it goes on, the sort of it just collapses under the weight of its own ambition, I think, because it tries to be more than just a fun, goofy comedy. It tries to actually say something, and I bristled at a lot of the stuff you guys were talking about. You're making fun of game streamers, and then you have Pokimane in there. Like that's the truth. That's the truth of it, and you have it in your movie, and yet the joke version is still in. It's just like you have the actual people that are all multimillionaires in your whatever. It's a minor thing but like it's pervasive, and I know you guys just went off on liking it, but I would never think I would ever say the following sentence, which is Taika Waititi is the worst part of this movie.
Wow.
He is by far almost unwatchable.
I can see that. Yeah.
I found him so grating, and like he's doing a cartoon character, which okay, fine. This movie is full of cartoon characters, but like what is that guy? Who's that guy?
He's in a different, it's from a different movie for sure.
It's from a different movie. Yes. It's such a weird caricature, and it just didn't work for me at all. Like none of not a single second he's on screen works for me. And I like the fact that it's very funny and apropos that this movie is clearly making fun of Blizzard, and was clearly made before Blizzard imploded. But it's kind of skewering Blizzard for the stuff that Blizzard imploded for in some sense, which is interesting. Also the fundamental, we got to get to spoilers for me to make that criticism. But yes, I think ultimately very watchable movie. You can have some big, dumb, goofy fun, but like the potential was there for it to actually be a really good movie. It sets up this kind of cool premise, and you could have it be a really great comedy. It just I think completely collapses in the third act.
I had a really good time with this one, guys. I think I might be the most positive of this entire group, which is not a position I'm used to being.
Definition of a good sit.
Yeah, it's a definition of a good sit.
How
I
about
think
that?
it was a lot of fun. I actually, I'm not quite, you guys know I play quite a bit of video games, but I'm not quite as steeped as you guys are in the culture. But I thought it was a reasonable depiction. Putting aside the making fun of the streamer people, like, or the basement dwellers, like, I thought it was a reasonable depiction of a video game. Like, there are movies we've seen, and I'm just going to spoil one of them right now. And so before I say the spoiler.
I will tell you, it's from a director that made movies like.
I mean, I guess if I say
Schindler's
the movie,
List.
but okay, so there's
What pickle you got yourself in.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I can't say what the movie is. I guess I can't say what the movie is. But there is a recent movie that stars Academy Award winners. That is a video game movie that we have talked about on this podcast. That has no sense of what it is.
Oh,
like
I
to
know
be
what
in a
movie you're
Yeah.
talking about.
It was
okay.
widely regarded as one of the worst movies of 2019. But
Yep.
anyway, I think you know what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna say what it is, but I thought, wow, this movie, like, yes, it takes some shortcuts, but overall, it actually gets gaming and gaming mechanics pretty well. This world that they're in is a combination of many things. For me, most proximately, felt like a combo of like Grand Theft Auto and Fortnite. Like those felt like the closest analogs, and I felt like it got most of the things right. It takes a lot of liberties, but like it got most of the things right, and that's kind of refreshing. I agree with you. It has this weird tone where it feels like it's coming from a perspective that's inside that world, but also like gawking at that world at the same time, right? Like that's kind of weird part of it. But I love the intricacy of the world. Like most scenes in the background, there's like a lot of stuff that's happening that they put a lot of work into putting in, like as kind of Easter eggs back there, and I really appreciate that.
And people doing like weird stuff that they would do.
Yes,
as a character in the game,
exactly. Like it really feels like they
swatting.
quote unquote
Yeah.
get it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like in some regards. And Ryan Reynolds, whatever. Like take him or leave
Yes.
him. I actually think his earlier work, like in the Nines and the Voices, like that's way more interesting to me than anything post Deadpool. But
He's basically playing the same character over and over
Right,
again. I'm not sure
right.
if you guys have seen there is a movie coming out. It is a spy movie with him and The Rock and Gal Gadot, and I swear that movie looks fake. Like that movie doesn't look like it exists because it's just a hodgepodge of all the
It's a
movies
Saturday
these
Night
people have already
Live
made.
fake
Yeah.
trailer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But he's fine. The cast is great. People are having a lot of fun, and yeah, the overall message of the movie is fairly simplistic, but a positive and uplifting one. I agree with Danish. A lot of potential introduced in the movie. A lot of like cool ideas brought up that are never paid off. But ultimately, there is this kind of through line to the movie, an emotional core that I think is quite sweet. So I quite enjoyed the movie. I think it's really fun, and I would recommend it if you're even casually into video games. It's just a fun time. So those are my thoughts, but we have so much more to discuss. So let's get into spoilers right now for Free Guy. Let me do that one more time. So those are my thoughts on the movie. All right, let's get into spoilers for Free Guy starting right now. All right, Danish. I think there's so many interesting things that this movie brings up, right? The idea of like reusing assets from a previous game in a new game, stealing people's IP, gamer
first of all,
culture. Yeah, go ahead.
Wait, let me just address that because fundamentally, like, don't they establish that he bought their game?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Like, that's a weird.
I don't understand what
like
the issue
an
is.
unforced error of
Yeah.
logic, where it's like there's no reason for you to have said that he bought your game. If you want the central crime to be that he stole your code, why? I mean, I guess because the guy's working there now, you got to justify him working there. But
why he's choosing to work there in the lowest position? Like, why is that a sense of honor that you want to basically be a tester rather than? I don't understand. Like, don't work there at all.
yeah, don't work there at all. But also, like, if he owns your code, he can put it in the fucking game if he wants. It's weird.
Yep.
It's weird.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean it's the way it's presented in the movie. It's totally like a plot hole. I think you can kind of forgive it by saying like, oh, maybe they bought the rights to the name or the company or whatever, but didn't get the rights to the code. There's probably some way to hash it. But again, it's like you said, it's an unforced error. They came out and said it when they didn't need to.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, and speaking
But
of
regardless of that,
speaking of interesting things, I just want to take 1 second to comment on the marketing of the movie. That's really interesting, I think, because none of the marketing mentions the main driving plot line of this movie, which is these two characters trying to get their code back or trying to reveal the Antoine, I think his name is, right? Like his treachery, right? And
I'm honestly shocked, Dave. You expect that?
No,
to be in the trailer?
I don't expect it. I just think it's interesting that like I agree. You have one movie that's like super fun, Ryan Reynolds cracking wise and like tons of action and explosions.
That's all you need.
And you have this other plot line that's like people sitting behind computers and doing like conventional hacking things. Like I know which ones I would market my movie on. I just think it's funny that like they just completely chose to like elide that from the marketing altogether. It's
I think
fascinating.
that
It's just
happens in a
fascinating.
lot of like mainstream action movies like this too.
I mean,
Like,
it is the
they're-
B plot.
Yeah.
It's the B.
Really? You
B-plot.
think it's the B plot? I feel
Yeah.
like
the A plot is what's up with
Ryan Reynolds becoming self-aware, basically.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. But worth pointing out, and despite that, the movie is still done really, really well. So
I see what really tickles your fancy though, Dave. Like it's not AI becoming self-aware. It is like code rights.
It's people sitting behind laptops, like frantically typing into them at the last minute.
Intellectual
Yeah, for sure.
property. That's that's gonna put
That's what
seats
really
in-
turns
yeah.
my crank for sure.
Butts and seats. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, so Danish, you have some thoughts on like the many interesting topics this movie brings up. What are some of them?
Yeah. So,
and how they
let's
pay
start
off?
with
Yeah.
let's talk about the lawsuits over code. I think this is a real thing. This happens many times. Most notably, Apple versus Epic wasn't about code. It was more about like other app licensing rights and stuff. But Facebook versus ZeniMax, that's one that happened a few years back where John Carmack left id Software to go work for Oculus, and then ZeniMax sued Facebook because they claimed that he stole proprietary information to make the VR headset, etc. So this is like, I just thought there was like, that's something I've never seen in a movie before. It's like something that is actually a legitimate thing. And then combine that with this other idea of something hidden in the game. Now that's not particularly new. I mean, that's kind of like Ready Player One or whatever, but I like the fact that it's these two things combined together. So you have the stolen code plot, but the stolen code is actually a hidden game, which is cool. It's a cool idea. That's I mentioned the Did You Know Gaming. That channel is awesome because it talks a lot about games that have cut features or like things that were just removed or not finished. And sometimes it's not completely removed from the game code, and you can go in and there's data miners that can find all these hidden Easter eggs and like cut features. And so that YouTube channel does a lot of that with different games. So it's very interesting to see. So I just thought it was a very cool idea to combine those two things into one plot and make it about this, like trying to recover this lost thing. So I thought that was actually really cool. There's a lot, do you have anything? I mean, there's other things I want to get into, but if you want to talk about that, what did you guys think about that? Did that work for you?
I don't know. I think the way it all is laid out in the movie is kind of clunky. I mean, I had a hard time getting past this notion that we bought your game and now it's in our game, and yet somehow that's illegal. And that I would go to the lengths of taking a axe to the servers for people not to discover that fact. Like,
you know what weird random game thing I had a problem with is I've been watching so much Digital Foundry on YouTube that there's a scene in this movie where they're like, they deleted the world, but they kept the reflections. I'm like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Or is it, Danish? Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, Danish.
Okay, so this is funny. This is the sort of thing where this movie is like aiming at so many different quadrants, and that's one thing that's kind of interesting. So the way something like that works, if you're not ray tracing, meaning calculating reflections live in the moment, the way it works is you have these things called scene capture actors that you place around the world. And what they do is they take like 360 photos of the environment, usually at a low resolution, and they store it in this sort of area. So anything that reflects, you actually are not doing a live like reflection calculation. What you're doing is you're looking at this saved image of what those reflections are.
Right.
So those are reflection maps.
Screen space reflections, is that what they're called, right?
That's a different technology.
Okay,
Screen space
never
reflections is live, but faked in a way that makes it look like reflections. So those are just baked in reflections, I guess you can call them. Or reflection maps is what you call them.
I see.
So when you change a level, if you do not rebuild the reflection maps, you can get stale reflection data. So that's a real thing that happens. Now, the plausibility of that and like, could you even do that? But whatever. That's the thing I was kind of getting back to, Dave, when you kind of said the same thing of like, I think this movie gets it, but very large, many times it ignores it or it changes it. It's like if you see a law drama, like a courtroom drama, and I know there's like YouTube videos of like breaking down courtroom scenes or whatever. It's like the writers of that show probably knew how courtrooms worked, but for dramatic purposes, they make changes in that. That's what I feel like this movie does, where it's like, okay, so this kernel of truth of a reflection map not being updated, that can happen. I thought, and when I first saw that, I was like, wow, that's actually like a deep cut. It's kind of interesting. But there's so much other hand waviness that you have to, so it's like this constant back and forth of like, well, that's accurate and that's not, but I see what they're saying, but that's totally insane. Like it's kind of all over the place.
The scene that I found grating right at the beginning was the scene where the two employees go into the game to track down the
It doesn't make
rogue
any sense.
It's so insulting to the intelligence of anybody that's ever played a game. You know, it's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And why? Just articulate why, Jeff, for those who might not be familiar.
Well, I mean, just the way that they talk to each other was super grating, as like you know,
like
going into the game.
gamer talk, basically.
Yeah, and then they're like, you know, editing the level in real time to get to him, and it's just like none of it makes any damn sense. And you know, they get their skins, and then they walk in, and they're like, "Hey, buddy, where'd you get that skin?" It's just like it's such a weird way to I mean, if you've ever played a video game and you've ever dealt with the mods of the video game or the, you know, the devs of the video game, no one like goes into the video game and walks over to you to talk to you. Like that's not necessary. You don't have to chase the character down in order to talk to the play. It just it makes no damn sense. And it's
what they wanted to do is treat it like cops approaching a suspect.
Right.
And so they're like, okay, well, that's how we'll do it. And like, so, you know, in real life, you would just have it on the server. You know, you would do it on your desk at your computer.
Right.
You wouldn't need to go into
you
the
would
game.
need to go into the game, right?
Now, that's not fun. So we can't do that. Oh, they're spoofing us or whatever. You know, they make up some shit.
Yeah.
Okay, you go in the game. How do you want to go in the game? Like how, like as a filmmaker, how would you depict that? Let's do it like cops. Okay, they're like the authority. They're coming down. So I get the impetus for it, but yeah,
Sure.
It doesn't really make sense. And one example of that, again, which is like, if anyone's played Doom in like 92, you know what no clip is. You know what you can like put on God mode and you can just like go through walls. And so when they're chasing them, instead of just like floating up through the walls and catching them, they have to do this whole Inception thing where things are refolding and, you know, rearranging and stuff because it's visually cool. That's another example where it's like, okay, well, I know that's not real, but obviously they're doing it because of the visual factor, you know? So,
right.
But like it's so that kind of spectrum of like what's okay and what's fudged and what's like totally off base is all over the place, you know?
Yeah. So what you're saying is like there's some things that are like, oh, that's actually pretty close to how they do it, and there's some things that are really, really far off, and it's kind of jarring the frequency of all these things. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything in the development side that is close to how it's done, but you know. It's sometimes it starts from an accurate place and then goes,
right.
You know.
And so let me just say, as you obviously heard just now, like Danish is very good at schooling me because I clearly know absolutely nothing about this whole topic. But I'll just say, as a fairly outside observer, I was surprised at how not bothered I was by a lot of this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I'm also
here's
surprised how not bothered you are.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I also I understand what you guys just said. Like, I know that like that's not, they wouldn't go in world to do it like that. That doesn't make any sense, right? So, but. I'm like, well, in my mind, I'm thinking exactly the thought process that Danish just went through, which is, well, they have to represent it somehow. They're not just going to show these guys typing at the computer. And so it's like, okay, fine, whatever. You're going to show them going into the world. That's a little bit more fun than if they were just typing at the computer. And
okay, I'm gonna make an analogy here that you're gonna hate, Dave. But
here it comes.
To me, this to me is no
this is the
different.
Dear Evan
than,
Hansen of
yes, it's no different. It's no different. It's like
video game movies.
They had to cast a 26-year-old guy. That was the guy that they cast. They did the best they could. They wanted to shoot it in close up. You just have to suspend your disbelief that he's a teenager. You know, like you couldn't get over that. I can't get over those are the choices they made in making the movie in order to make it palatable to a certain audience.
Right.
I have a hard time getting over that fact. Like you didn't have to make those choices. There's ways to make that exciting and interesting that doesn't come off to me as just stupid on the face of it. And I feel like I think you felt sort of insulted that you're to believe that this person is 16 or whatever. And I think that's the similar feeling that I have here is like, I'm staring at something that is patently ridiculous, and you're asking me to just swallow it for no reason. Like there are ways to make that plot point fun and not actively insult my intelligence, I think.
Yeah,
fair
I agree.
enough.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think over and over again, they do underestimate the audience's intelligence. I think that if you imagine like think of some other fantasy world, like the Matrix or something like that, there's lots of exposition, there's lots of rules, there's like ways of doing things. Like you can make that stuff interesting. Like if someone were to do something in a creative way that actually is how things work and are extrapolated. Like so Matrix again, you have stand-ins for different programs. You have the Keymaster, or what, I can't remember his name is, who's like this. I love this. He says to Neo, the only way to know someone is to fight them.
I think
and then they have this fight scene.
Seraph,
yes.
Yeah.
The only way to know someone is to fight them. They fight, and he just stops. It's like, okay, you're in. He's the login screen.
Yep.
So that's what you can do. But they didn't do that. They did something that doesn't really have a tether to reality.
Yeah, you're saying if they had like represented, or if they had explained that these things that are happening in the game are somehow like representative of real world actions, that might help to ground the thing a little bit. Yeah,
exactly.
Or just like think through what it would be like if you're sitting at a video game screen trying to interact with someone that you think is a person but is actually just part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a way to make that fucking fascinating, like and kind of authentic. I mean, you can abstract it in a sense because you've got actors pretending to be in a video game, but like think through what that process might be like and how you can effectively translate that to an audience. It just feels lazy to me to turn it into Ready Player One. It's
yeah. Okay, go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
Go ahead. Did we lose Devindra? I feel like he hasn't said anything in so long.
I'm here.
He's
I'm
here.
just, you guys are doing your thing.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add here.
I think that okay, Jeff. Fair points. I have a couple thoughts. Thought number one is I feel like the idea of the video game world was just too intoxicating to the filmmakers, Ryan Reynolds included. Right? Like it's just like they have this fun world where people can have these fun colors and outfits and interesting effects and stuff like that. And it's like, why not do everything in that world if possible, right? And so they wanted to use that world to the maximal extent. I'm not saying therefore your experience should have been different. I'm just trying to reason through what their logic might have been. Right?
I think to a certain extent they succeeded in that. Like the first 10 minutes of being introduced to that world and what it must be like to be an NPC that is not the center point, that the people with the sunglass people are the heroes and the world centers around them and there are no rules for them and all of that stuff. Like I was in, I bought it. I like, this is such a cool way to think about the GTA like experience. I mean,
This is
so
GTA
it wasn't
Online.
a complete
in a
failure.
sense.
Yeah,
I don't know
and
if you guys have played GTA Online, but it is very much this, just
right.
like madness in
And,
the city.
and on that note, there were like other things that I was kind of like impressed that they actually kind of got right. So let me list them, and then you guys can tear me down if you guys don't agree. But for instance, like the concept of like having a garage with all your stuff in it, right? Like, I was just like, oh, that's an actual game mechanic that they put in the movie, and that's kind of cool. The idea of like leveling, like that's a real thing that happens. I know that's a simple one, but like,
sorry to interrupt. The garage thing though too. I also enjoyed that sequence where it's like throwing all the bad guys at him, and there's like a guy with boxing gloves, and like it's just like every wacky NPC.
Little Mike.
It's just
Little Mac.
They even said they put spawn points in there. They're just coming at you. Yeah.
The line was, they booby trapped the spawn points. I thought it was funny.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I felt like they got in for me, and I don't have a video game podcast like you, Jeff. But they got enough right that I was like, oh, okay. Like they made an effort, and the stuff they didn't make an effort on is stuff that there was some like obvious decisions. So for instance, like the idea of like Taika Waititi taking an axe to servers and then the game world vanishing like that. Like, I don't think that's actually how it works in real life. Okay. But
I mean, they do have axes in all those server rooms. So
and then, Ryan Reynolds, the guy creating like a ramp for Ryan Reynolds at the last minute. It's like, Really? Is that how that would work? Like that? Like you're like
yeah, sure.
trying to outrun the game world disappearing. Like it's like
Yeah.
trying to outrun the weather in the day after tomorrow. It doesn't quite work that way.
No,
you
it's
know?
more. Yeah, it's like it's either broken or it's not broken. There's
Right.
no transition moment between being broken
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I
So-
did like the dude character who has all placeholder stuff that he's
Yeah,
like
that was
not
really
done
funny.
made, and
Yeah.
that was very funny, very funny.
Very
Danish,
funny and very accurate too. Yeah.
What did you think of what did you think of those things I mentioned about like stuff that they kind of got right? Do you agree with that or?
I agree with that. There
Yeah.
are a number of things I got right, and I mentioned that too. When you know, like people jumping up and down and teabagging and all that stuff was really, I thought, clever and funny.
Yeah.
And I liked the mechanic of the sunglasses giving you the UI.
Yeah,
and like
that was cool.
That's the thing that changes it, is that you see the UI. You know, I think that was all very well done. Yes.
Danish, any thoughts on what else they got right or wrong?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that stuff. It's pretty good. The placeholder stuff is hilarious. There's so much, like 90% of development is all placeholder stuff. So when I first saw that, I was like, oh my god, that's so funny. I haven't seen that before. So, and like it's also placeholder in terms of VO lines, logic, like AI logic, like yeah. So that was really good. Yeah, I was gonna say about
I'm
the
wondering,
building.
Dave. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say about building the ramp thing. I thought that was hilarious because, like, what that would actually take would just be it would take so long to do, like dragging like things. I'm just picturing like in Unreal Editor, like dragging an asset in and making sure all the logic's
drag your
hooked up,
mouse, Danish.
and then you gotta
maybe the
drag it.
Fortnite
That's all.
Fortnite editor in there. Have you ever created a ramp in
Right.
Fortnite? It takes like 3 seconds, Danish.
That's true, actually. I mean, they never showed any NPCs creating things, but I guess
Yeah.
that's plausible.
Yeah.
That's
Devin,
it.
what were you
I'm
saying?
wondering, Dave. This movie takes place basically in a square block of the Boston area. Like this is like around
Yes.
where you grew up.
Yes.
Did it
it's true.
feel? Did you notice that? Did it feel like legit? They did a lot with one block.
Yeah,
basically.
no, I
Yeah.
thought they made Boston look like really cool and kind like
Mhm.
it's like plausibly otherworldly. Obviously, the architecture is very old, and so when you layer in kind of modern gaming UI on top of it, it has this really unique feel. So I appreciated that. Something that was weird is the video game company is apparently located in Seattle
Yep.
because outside the window you can see the Space Needle. The place where the video game company is located is apparently my house, in a view that does not technically exist. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like
Again, you may be living in a video game right now.
it's true, but I was like, it was fascinating to see that because I know the skyline very well. And so to see that view, and I'm like, that angle is literally impossible. There is literally nothing there where they're showing the angle to Seattle from. But yeah, I dug the use of Boston in the movie. I thought it was really cool, and made me miss Boston a little bit, especially all those scenes at the harbor. That looked kind of nice,
It looked really nice. But also, this is where you discover most of those window shots are probably generated as well.
Yeah, I so much
Probably
of
not
it.
really where they shot it.
Yeah, I
It
don't
was
think
interesting-
there's no
Go ahead.
beach. There's no Miami Beach like portion of Boston either. So,
Right.
But Jeff, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as far as the ending goes, it was interesting to me that it kind of flips on its head the trope of the '80s movie of she was right there the whole time.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best.
Mhm.
And this, it
Mhm.
kind of gender swaps that, and I thought it was kind of clever.
No, I thought that was great. Like the fact that Guy is the love letter to her, like that's such a great idea. It's weird that they didn't really set it up that much.
Right.
Like
I agree.
it's like it wouldn't have taken much to do that, and because it is such a good payoff, but I kind of wish that was built up to it,
I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting that
I
was it the
think
clip.
there were little bits, sort of like
The video clip that she plays at the end, isn't that like the same clip that she played earlier?
Yeah, I didn't really understand that.
I thought
Like,
that was kind of
did
interesting. I think the idea is it's the same clip,
But she
and
didn't
then-
watch the whole thing.
but she didn't
first
watch the
time
whole thing, or she
something?
wasn't paying attention, or whatever.
Right,
So I
right,
think it
right.
was cool that they kind of used a thing that you'd already seen to
Yeah.
make her realize the thing. I thought that was kind of interesting.
she,
Did you enjoy
she
what
was
were you
too
going to say?
busy coding. They did set up some things where it's like the specific coffee order and the little
Yeah.
bits of personality, the Mariah Carey song he loves so much. Like I think those things layered in there is actually more than I would expect from
Yeah.
a movie like this. to
The thing
actually
is,
set up that
they
relationship.
wanted it. They wanted to be a twist, kind of like they wanted you to feel what Jodie Comer's character felt of like, oh, I didn't see it, and they kind of formulated the arc like a twist because if you knew
Right,
that
right.
he was, really interested in her definitively from the beginning, that would have changed kind of like the whole thing, So, but then because you didn't do that, the payoff wasn't as high as it could have been, So it's kind of like catch-22.
All right.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts on Free Guy?
I do have a couple more thoughts.
Hit us, Danish.
I really like this way into sentient AI. It's is it?
I think that's what the movie is saying, is like the fifth element is love.
Is love.
I didn't get that, but I guess so. Basically, like the plot is that they came up with this AI, algorithm or whatever that kind of grows and builds its functions and stuff, and it was going to be like this sandbox aquarium or whatever. And then he took it, and that's why Free City is so popular, because the AI is so good. I thought that was kind of cool. And then at some point, just by iterations of them growing and learning, there's an inflection point where it tips over. That's the way I took it.
My understanding is that he built a character who was pining away for a very specific woman. And when that character saw that specific woman, it unlocked, it achieved the thing it had always wanted, and that sort of unlocked its sentience. Love made it happen.
I
I
agree
got
with Jeff on this, which is not something I say very often, so it's notable.
or ever.
Also, you mentioned Tron. It actually was more like Pleasantville, because he's the one who's awoken, and he's trying to get others to awaken too. That's why I don't think it was love, because like he just has to like give them that. Love was the final push over the edge. And then now he's trying to do that for all the others. Like they don't all need to find true love to become sentient. What else was to say? There's a couple plot holes besides they bought it and houses stolen. The first moment where Guy kisses Millie, and even though that's not in the game, it's not programmed to do it, but he's doing it because it's like sentient. How does she kiss him at the end in the game?
Yeah. There's no button for that. They
There's no
specifically
button.
say
There's
there's no button for that.
Button for that.
Yeah.
The other thing was I really liked. We didn't talk about it at all, but Lil Rel Howery, Buddy, great. I mean, he's a very one-dimensional character, but I just love seeing him. He's just a really great presence, and I really like that scene where after Ryan Reynolds finds out the world's not real, and there's like that conversation where he's like, "Well, this moment's real," And I thought that was really nice, really well delivered too. But at the very end, Buddy says, "I've been scared my whole life until now," or whatever. And I was like, "Were you really?" Like that came out of nowhere. So I don't know what that is.
I mean, he existed to be robbed every day, so that's
true. Scared in that moment. Maybe.
There was a nice moment when he Ryan Reynolds tried to get him to put on the glasses and he couldn't do it. That was actually really compelling moment. Yeah.
And also that whole conversation of what we need to tell ourselves once we realize we are actually living in a simulation, folks. Like, you're gonna have to justify your reality to yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. One more small detail which I really loved.
Not looking forward to that day, by the way.
Is I love how in the game studio the artists are this separate entity that are like their own world. The designers, artists, totally accurate. the sort of like split between the programmers and the artists is a thing. In fact, at my old studio, the building was split down the middle, and all the artists were on the left side of the building, although the programmers were on the right side of the building, which is really, really funny. And they always kind of like, in a loving way, kind of talk shit to each other about, "Oh yeah, you artists, this and that. Oh, you programmers," So I thought that was funny, and that woman's reaction to like these ridiculous demands, that was always funny too. So I appreciated that.
All right. Well,
it is also interesting that sorry, Dave, I know you're trying to wrap up here, but it is also interesting that like the whole premise, hook of the premise, is that the reason that this game is so successful is because the AI is so good, and yet. At no point do you see the AI acting in a way that was even remotely good.
Yeah, exactly. I totally thought of that too. Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, Danish, I really appreciate you stopping by and letting us know what was accurate and what was not accurate in the movie. It's actually really fascinating, and I'm glad there were some things that people took away from this movie that they enjoyed. But it sounds like you guys are kind of middling on it. I had a great time. personally.
No, I mean, I had a fine
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Yeah,
I had
I
fun
liked
with it.
People had
Yeah,
fun.
me
People
too.
had fun.
I had fun.
All right, cool. And at the end of the day, guys, it's pretty impressive that Sean Levy made a movie. So
Yeah.
He makes
true.
a lot of movies apparently too. It's a long list of credits. It's wild.
It's impressive that Sean Levy made a movie better than Steven Spielberg.
it's true. You can find more episodes of this podcast at thefilmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from adamwarrock.bandcamp.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker and YouTuber Kyle Hillinger. Our weekly plugs music comes from Noah Ross. This episode was edited by Beatty Zhang. Danish, I want to say thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
Thank
this
you.
was a blast.
Next week, we will be discussing The Many Saints of Newark, which is the new Sopranos-based movie
Also
that
a
is-
video game movie. Yeah.
that's going to be
Based on
released.
Max Payne, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
There
It was
was a
Saints
Sopranos video
Row.
game, by the way.
There
and it
was,
regarded
yeah.
as one of the worst video games of all time. But Many Saints of New York, I'm really excited to see what it is. I don't know if it's going to be good, but I think it's going to be interesting, especially as a
It's gonna be interesting.
big Sopranos
Yeah.
fan. So that's going to be out on HBO Max as well. And that'll be our main review next week. Stick around later this week for the After Dark if you're a patron. Thanks so much. We'll see you later.